Well, hello everyone. It looks like we are live. Welcome to my channel. My name is Derek Daniel from lifeaftersightloss.com. So glad that you are watching this. If you are joining me live, welcome. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you for taking time out of your day to do that. Today, I wanted to talk about what are some other things that we lose when we go through sight loss. Now, I know this probably sounds like a very depressing topic, and it certainly can be. But that's all right because I think it's actually an important topic and one that we need to just kind of address and at least get to thinking about. And I think that's important. I'm just looking here and looking around to see how many views we'll have. If I look down, towards my monitor, just sort of ignore that because as we're visually impaired, we can only do so many things at a time. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through this. Let's see here. As we get started, I just want to let you know that I don't know where you're at right now, but where I'm at, it's very dreary outside. It's very, it's dark and, that sort of thing. So, anyway, hey, the Blind Jedi's here. Hi, how you doing? Good to see you. Glad that you decided to join me live. They've changed the way this, the way the thing looks. So it doesn't, I'm sure it gives you view count, but now, of course, I can't find it. So anyway, that's not really that important. Well, I'm glad that you're here, and I just wanted to jump into talking about this. I will check the chat periodically if you do want to leave a comment or a question, but for the time being, I'm just going to go ahead and talk for a few minutes about this topic. So today I'm very reflective, and I'll go ahead and tell you why. Like I said, it's dreary outside for one, but today is actually an impactful day in my life, and I'm not going to go into great detail about this specifically, but let me just give you the basis of it. So 5 years ago today, I lost my best friend. He and I, actually, we grew up together. He lived a little bit farther away from me, and so we went to church camp together and things like that. So it's not like we were really close as kids growing up or anything, but I ended up moving. I'm in Indianapolis now, and I ended up moving up to Indianapolis to take a position at a church, and he was the senior pastor, and he, wrangled me in, and I came and was the associate pastor. And so he and I actually worked together very closely for 2 years. And we were the kind of friends where we got on each other's nerves, but we really enjoyed one another. And it was the friendship where you knew that, hey, if I'm in trouble, this dude's going to fight for me, that sort of thing. So even though we got on each other's nerves, even though it was kind of like, whatever the case was, we still had a good time. So anyway, the point of it is, he was actually killed 5 years ago today. And again, I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but it was a very, very shocking, tragic event. And so today I'm really, really reflective. I'm thinking a lot about him, a lot about the time period afterwards, and just a lot of things have changed in the last 5 years. So today I think about that. Of course, today I'm also thinking about just him and my friendship and, all that sort of thing. And again, this video isn't about that. But the idea that being reflective leads you down a path of thinking a lot of things, I think that's kind of where I'm at. And the other day, how this applies to sight loss, the other day I was on a Facebook group, and a person in the group said something like they were dealing with separation anxiety. And I won't go into detail on what they were talking about, but the idea for me was really interesting because I was like, wow, separation anxiety. Like, are they talking about being separated from your sight? Because that's a really interesting idea to me, because I'd never really thought about that. And so as I began to think about separation from sight, then I began to think about the other things that we lose whenever we go through sight loss. Now, this might be depressing. Maybe you've been visually impaired for 10, 20, 50 years, and you're like, wow, this is so depressing, Derek. You're usually so positive. Why are you so depressed? Again, just understand the day I'm having and the weather outside. It's that kind of day. It's that kind of stuff I'm thinking about. I'm still very positive, and I'm not looking to be like, oh, blue, I'm sad, but I still want to be positive. I'm just in that mood today, or in that mode. Maybe that's a better way to say it, because I'm not in a bad mood or whatever. I'm just in a different mode. So I was thinking about the things you lose whenever you go through sight loss, because a lot of people get this idea that when you have sight loss, then your life is over. And they can't really pinpoint why they think it's over, but they definitely have that idea. The tagline I always use on the videos on my podcast is always, sight loss isn't the end, it's just the beginning. And I say that specifically, but I always do tell people there is the end of something, and so what do you lose whenever you go through sight loss? Well, I think the first thing, obviously, is the sight itself. You got to talk about that. That's, kind of a duh thing. You lose the sight. Whether you lose 50%, 60, 70, 80, 100, whatever amount you lose, you do lose sight. So you lose that physical seeing other things, people, places, you lose that. That's sort of the first, that's it, you're losing sight. So I think that's the first thing to address, is just to remember that, you're going to go through physical sight loss, which is kind of what I talk about as well. But then the other things that go along with that. So first of all, I thought about freedom. You lose freedom. Why? Well, you can't just go hop in the car. You can't just, go somewhere that you want to go. You can't just do something you want to do, especially at first. Now, again, maybe you've been visually impaired for a long time. You're like, well, I pretty much do what I want to do. But especially at first, you lose that sense of freedom, that sense of independence, because now you can't just get up and go. You can't just, maybe go into the kitchen and get whatever you want. Again, I know, I'm not talking about people that are been visually impaired for 50 years. I'm talking about those people that are new. It's like, oh, this is what you feel. And even if you have been visually impaired for 50 years, you can probably think back to this time and think, wow, maybe that's why I was feeling that way. So, you lose the sense of freedom. You lose that ability just to go and do and be a part of something without anybody's permission, without anybody's help. You lose independence, and I think they go hand in hand. You could separate freedom and independence into two categories, but I think they do go hand in hand in this situation. So you lose freedom, you lose independence. Then you kind of lose the ideal of the life that you were living. And I don't mean you lose your life. I don't mean that you forever won't have the same life or whatever. You could have a very similar life. You just happen to be visually impaired. But this is especially true if your loved one loses their sight. Think about, like, if your kid lost their sight, you will forever lose the idea that you had for their life. You'll forever lose the pictures that you had for their future. Now, they will still have a great future. Blindness does not stop them. They'll still go out and have a job and a career and family or whatever they're going to do. They can still have all that. But you as a parent, you as a loved one, you as whatever, a sighted supporter, you lose that picture that you have of whatever you thought life was going to be like. Because now, if you go on vacation, you're not going to be able to share driving anymore. That looks different. It's just all about the way you think about it. Again, you're not losing life. You're not losing the good times or whatever. You're just losing the picture that you had. So think about if you had a scrapbook, okay? And you had filled this scrapbook up with things from the past, things that are happening now, and things that are going to happen in the future. Plans that you have, dreams that you have, imagination, fill up this book. And so the past, all that stuff is still there. The present, all that stuff that's happened kind of right in the past, even the present I would call maybe the past year or whatever, just right now, that stuff's still there. But then you start to turn the page and all that stuff for the future starts to go away. Because now you don't know what to expect in the future. You've lost the ability to sort of predict the future at first, and that has gone away. Again, your scrapbook probably will look pretty cool and maybe even very similar as you get into the future, but now you've lost that picture of what it could have been. You've lost that ability to see and go, wow, I can plan this out 100%. Now, planning it out isn't always necessarily the perfect idea because plans change and life changes, but especially if you're a person who's like, I put this in the scrapbook and I've got it all the way down till, the last page or whatever, that's gone and those pages are blank. And I think, I've talked about that before, I think on the channel and other places that, the future is somewhat now kind of just, you've lost that picture of the future. You've lost that tangibility of the future. It's gone. And, that doesn't just come back automatically. So you've lost freedom, you've lost, the picture of what life could be like in the future, that sort of thing. So, that's where you're at. So as we're going here, I obviously cannot tell if anybody is is watching this. I don't know why. I don't know where the view count is. Let's see. Oh, there's the view count. Okay, we got a few people watching right now. If you're watching this live, it's on Friday the 19th. If you're watching this live, then leave something in the chat and let me know where you're watching, how you're watching, and if you resonate with any of this. Maybe you have a question or comment as well. I'll be happy to check that out. Just leave it in the chat. If you're watching this on a desktop, the chat is on the right of the video screen. If you're watching this on a mobile phone, then it's at the bottom of the screen. It says live chat. I'm pretty sure VoiceOver reads it on Android maybe as well. So the Blind Jedi says, you're not alone, brother. Yeah, it's totally not alone. I mean, those are the kind of things I think that's important to talk about these things. That's why I talk about these things personally. And it's not like nobody's talking about it, but so many times we don't talk about it. And there's so many of us who want to talk about it or are feeling it or aren't sure how to deal with it. And because nobody's talking about it, we're like, am I a freak? Am I, am I never moving on? What's my life like? And it's like, yeah, this is the things, that we go through. So we've talked about losing freedom. We've talked about losing the picture of the life that we once had. Other things that go along with this, the potential of losing your job. Somebody in a Facebook group talked about the other day of losing their dream job. They're no longer going to be able to do that job. And so you potentially lose the career that you thought you'd have. And again, that kind of goes into the picture of the future a little bit, but it's a very specific thing. You lose the thing that gave you purpose. Now, I just did a whole podcast about identity and purpose and how that we actually think of it backwards. If you want to check that out, let me just type a link into the chat if you want to check it out. Of course, I guess I'm supposed to think they're all good, right? Let's see, 010. Okay, there's the link to that podcast if you want to check it out. So you can go check that one out. Let me check the chat here real quick, just so we can see if anybody else is commenting. Let's see. All right. So we've got a couple of, hey, from India. That's so cool. I love the internet. Like if watching from India, awesome. Welcome. Glad that you're here. Let's see. From Saudi, that's very cool. Gosh, all over the place. Like I think the wonders of the internet, right? It's so amazing. So anyway, we talked about losing your job, like how you can, have that plan in your head, and this is what I'm always going to do. And if you got questions about purpose, about identity, check out that podcast, that link I left in the chat, because, and I'll actually put a link to it in the description of this video as well, in case you're watching this on the replay. So loss of freedom, independence, loss of the life you thought you were going to live, the plans that you had, the future section in your scrapbook, the loss of your career, potentially, and these are all kind of potentials. I think freedom and independence maybe are solid, but as we get into these aren't always sure. Potentially loss of relationship. I mean, let's face it, some people are like, I didn't sign up to deal with a blind person. I'm not going to deal with this. Whether that's a spouse, whether that's a friend, whether that's family members, whatever, you could have the loss of relationships. And it's like, holy cow. Now, again, you might say, well, those people would be jerks if they just left because you were blind. But the reality is, that could happen. I mean, you could lose key relationships in your life, all because your sight has now diminished. And it's not because you're blind. I think that's what people would say. Well, I can't deal with you because you're blind. It's because they have now lost the life that they once had, or at least the life they thought they were going to live with you, whether it was your spouse, whether it was your friend, whether it was whatever. They're now going to have to adjust their life to live, quote, with you in this way. Now, most people, if they love you, they're with you, they follow, whatever, they're going with it. But there could be relationships that just fall apart because they're like, I've got to take you places, or I've got to help. I didn't sign up to be a caregiver, and I'm not going to do this. Now, you can call them a jerk, you can call them whatever you want, but there is the potential of losing that relationship in your life. So you got to keep that in mind, that may happen. And again, so we're talking about the loss of sight, but so many times it's not simply the loss of sight. It is the loss of so many other things that go along with that.
So if you're experiencing sight loss, or if you've experienced it in the past, there might be some things along the way that you're like, oh, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm grieving, or I'm depressed, or whatever, because of sight loss. And while that's true, it might actually be the other things that are you have lost, that are causing the grief, that are causing the pain, the hurt, or whatever it may be. So let's say, for instance, you lose a key relationship. Maybe your wife is with you, and you've been married 10 years or whatever, and you got 2 kids or 10 kids, who knows what. But all of a sudden you lose your sight, and your wife bails after 6 months because she's like, I can't deal with this, and now I got to go. Well, I think what we assume then is, sight loss has caused me grief. And while sight loss is a sort of, I don't know, catalyst to this decision that she has made, she's made a decision that then causes hurt and pain. So I think struggling we're like, oh, well, I'm just upset about sight loss. Well, you're upset about the loss of the relationship. You got to deal with that. And so oftentimes, and this has turned into a counseling session a little bit, but oftentimes we get so focused on this thing, the loss of sight. And it's true, it's terrible, it's tragic, don't get me wrong. But it is all the other things that start to disappear in our lives. I did a blog post about my disappearing car and how I watched it disappear. And all too often, we forget that we're losing things, that things are disappearing from our life. When I lost my sight, I couldn't go to college right away. It totally changed my college experience. I could never get that back. I couldn't go back in time and recreate the college experience I was going to have as a sighted person. It was over. It was done. That part of my scrapbook, that I was going to do this and go to this party, and that was gone. It was over because I couldn't go. I only missed a semester, but still, it changed it. And I lost that beautiful, wonderful picture of being a college student, and going and experiencing all the firsts with my friends. And by the time I got to college, they had already had all their firsts and they were moving on. And so for me, I lost that thing. So being depressed in that moment wasn't just the sight loss. It was the fact that I was now living a life that I had not been prepared for, that I had not seen, quote unquote, seen coming. That's a stupid pun. That's terrible. But I had not, really set myself up for. And I had fully, think about it this way. You, I, all of us, we fully set ourselves up for the life that we plan for, right? Whether you're 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, you set yourself up for the life that you've planned. Whether it is to live on a farm and, have cattle and 10 kids and live out in the middle of the sticks, whether it's you're going to go and pursue an acting career, whether it's you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, whether you're going to put roofs on, those kinds of jobs, whether it's that you're going to volunteer at an animal shelter, whether, whatever the life you have planned, you've fully invested in your mind for that life. And then when sight loss comes on and strips everything away, and that, just think about it, stripping it all away, then you've got to totally readjust, and without ever being prepared. Nobody's like, hey, you might have the great picture of somebody saying you're going to lose your sight in 3 months, so go ahead and start preparing now. It's kind of like you've got 6 months to live, so you kind of do all those things. But a lot of times with sight loss, it starts coming on so quickly, and you're totally unprepared. I know in my case, I was totally unprepared for it, and you've got to internally adjust so quickly that all this investment you've put into the future of who you're going to be, that's gone now. And so it's like, and it causes a strain on your mind, strain on your body, strain on your heart and your relationships and everything. And so when we lose our sight, we have the potential to lose so much more. And I think that is a lot of what we react to when we go through sight loss. It's not simply the loss of sight itself, because the reality is, if you just look at it on very surface level here, just look at the core, look at the surface, look at the reality. The reality is sight loss isn't as huge a deal as it was a long time ago. There's so many more accessible things today. I mean, I use an iPhone and a Mac and an iPad, to do all my stuff. There's just all kinds of audio description at movies. There's Uber and Lyft and, all these things for transportation. There's just so much. If there's a good time to lose your sight, it's now. There's not a good time. But if there were a good time, it'd be this day and age, because we have so much to help us access the world around us. Now, no, it's not the same way we've always done it, and you have to adjust to that, and that takes time, and we all get that. But the reality is, responding to the sight loss itself, that's a very kind of practical step-by-step thing. Responding to all the other things in your life, that I think is what we're actually dealing with. Struggling with the loss of our job, struggling with the loss of a relationship, struggling with the loss of freedom, the loss of identity, the loss of structure, the loss of the future that we thought we'd have, the loss of the future we thought our family would have, if it's our loved one, if we're sighted supporter. Those sort of things, I think, are what we're really responding to. And I'm not suggesting that you're not responding to sight loss. I'm not suggesting that you aren't sad for the loss of your sight, not seeing your kids grow up, or not being able to watch your favorite movie anymore, or not being able to cook like you always did if you really enjoy that. Those kinds of things, the physical sight loss part, definitely we react to that. But I wonder how much it really is about the other things we lose. Whether it happens or, whether it's going to happen for sure. Like, I think independence is a big one that probably happens to everyone until you sort of adjust and move forward. But, even if it's not assured, like the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, those aren't assured. But I think we also fear that, and we respond to that. Even if we haven't lost our relationship, we fear we will. And so if our spouse says, no, I'm sticking, I'm with you 100%, we fear, oh, maybe they'll leave tomorrow, and so then we're responding to the potential of loss because, and I'm just thinking out loud here, join me for the ride here, because we've already lost in our mind. We've lost now sight that was so, like, we never prepared to lose our sight, and now that we've lost it, we can lose anything. It's kind of like when you lose a loved one. You tell everybody you love them, and you go through that mode, and that's good and that's helpful. But my goodness, we can respond to the loss of sight in ways that we weren't prepared for, and that sort of thing. So I've rambled on. Let me check the chat here real quick and see kind of what we got going on, because I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Let me read this. So the Blind Jedi, which, by the way, again, Blind Jedi, I love your name. It's you're probably getting a big bump in traffic. People are searching for the Last Jedi at this point. He says, I assume you're he. Feel the things that it says, feel the things I lost from sight loss affected me more than the sight loss itself. He said that makes sense. So. Let's see. Didn't prefer. Yeah. By the way, I do the same thing. I'll dictate anytime I dictate sight loss. It's SITE. So anyway, he said, Blind Jedi says that makes sense, and I hope it does make sense. If you're watching this on the replay, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this. Send me an email if you want. My email address is in the description box as well. But again, I'm not coming out and stating absolutely with 100% certainty you're not responding to sight loss. You're responding to all these other things. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is all these other potential things are ways and avenues for us to go through grief, loss, pain, anxiety, stress, depression, fill in the blank. They're paths to those things. So it's not necessarily, I'm saying, again, just making this clear, very clear, I'm not saying that you're not responding to sight loss. We're all responding to sight loss. Sight loss is tragic, and it's very difficult to deal with. I get it. So I want to make sure if you're watching this live or on the replay, you hear me very clearly on that, okay? So I don't want anybody to come and be like, you should have seen this guy. He was saying that I wasn't sad because I lost my sight. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are many other let's put it this way. There are many other avenues or opportunities of loss when you experience sight loss. And that can go for other things as well. Loss of a loved one, loss of a limb, loss of the ability to use your body in a certain way, like if you are paralyzed or something like that. Loss of, just a lot of different situations are affected by that. And so I think that it's important to remember this. And I don't know, again, I don't have any grand closer, to be like, and here's what I think, and here's how to deal with it. Sometimes you just have to face it and be like, wow, maybe I do need to face those things, because they always say that the first step to getting over a problem is admitting you have a problem, and I think that goes for the first thing in the best way to deal with something is to face it head on and say, you know what, I think this is what I need to discuss. If your spouse leaves you, being mad at the sight loss, or just saying, oh, I'm just going to think really positively about the fact that I lost my sight, you probably actually need to face the fact that you're wounded by somebody leaving you, and that in and of itself is a whole nother discussion that we're not talking about today, or on this live stream or on this replay. So yeah, I just think, again, I'm in a very like somber mood and that sort of thing. So that's where this came out of. So basically, that's what I wanted to share today. I don't know if it's insightful or full of amazing things or whatever the case is, but for me, it just really resonated as I thought about it and as I read some other Facebook posts and things like that. So thank you if you watched this live. If you were here live, I really appreciate it. I thank you for taking time out of your busy day to do this. It is one of those things where I enjoy just coming on and talking and discussing certain things. So again, thanks for watching this live. I appreciate it, and I hope that it was encouraging to you. Don't forget, my email is in the description box below if you want to send me a message. If you're watching this on the replay, you can leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts about this topic, because I'd love to hear about it. Thanks again for watching, guys, and until next time, remember that sight loss isn't the end. It's just the beginning. My name's Derek Daniel from lifeaftersightloss.com, and I'll see you in the next one.